Okay, so now that we've talked about everything else under the sun here before we get to this podcast. So Jeremy Devaney, Senior Mortgage Loan Officer, Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation. So what exactly is a Senior Mortgage Loan Officer?
It's an older mortgage loan officer. No, so
Advanced.
More seriously, it's a advisor to homeowners or prospective homeowners, folks who are looking to obtain a mortgage. I help them through the process from start to finish, guiding them in their selection of mortgage products, and then discussing the different puts and takes of each of those products as they go through, and then helping them through the underwriting process as well, and then servicing the loan afterwards, helping folks to manage their ownership costs over the life cycle of their home ownership.
What do you mean by servicing the loan? What does that entail?
So I always tell clients, really, our relationship starts when the loan closes.
Okay.
A lot of times you'll find that your banking relationship with your loan officer ends at the closing table, but really all the major questions happen once you have the house. How does your ownership time frame change? How does your goals of ownership change over time? How does your financial well-being change over time? What can you do to the house? We before the podcast got rolling, we were talking about your neighbors and what they were looking to do with the house, or you and your fiance looking at doing different things with your house. Mm-hmm. Those are all things. As life moves on, you look at your assets and what your assets can do for you. A lot of people forget that their house is their largest asset, and so a lot of that counts. A lot of that advisory takes place after they own the house.
Tell us about Fairway Independent Mortgage Corp.
Sure, fourth largest lender in the country, second largest independent lender. So what that really means is we're a non-depository institution. Skip the jargon. We don't take deposits. We don't have bank branches. We don't have tellers. All we do is mortgage loans, residential mortgage loans to be specific. So we don't have a commercial arm or anything of the sort.
Because I was actually going to ask you, what's the difference between you guys and a Bank of America? My mortgage is, I have to pay Bank of America. I was wondering what the difference was.
So honestly, we actually originate mortgages. We create mortgages for a lot of the big bricks and mortars banks in the country because our overhead costs are lower. So you go into a Bank of America branch and pick your company. If you go into their branch and say I need a mortgage, you're only looking at Bank of America mortgage product. As an independent mortgage bank, I have the whole world at my fingertips in terms of mortgage products. Ultimately, there's different investors out there that invest in conforming loans and jumbo loans and all sorts of different stuff. So Santander, Wells Fargo, Chase, they're BB&T, they're all investors that ultimately buy loans off of our books. We do underwrite and originate directly for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and HUD FHA loan programs. We originate from Mass Housing. So there's a lot of different loan products that we can bring to bear that a normal bricks and mortar wouldn't be able to do. And on top of it, we can do it faster and more cheaply in 99% of the situations than a bricks and mortar bank.
Something that's I've always found kind of interesting about the mortgage industry is, why do mortgages get sold? For example, when I bought my house, I had my loan through this bank, and then a month later it got sold to Bank of America. What's the reasoning behind that?
Sure. So that's called the secondary market. So the primary market, the first tier of the market is us making the loan to people. The secondary market is what happens to it once that mortgage, which is an asset to the bank, is created. And so if you think about it real fundamentally, if I loan you, Jonathan, $100, and I just hold on to the note that says I loaned you $100, I can't go and make another loan until that $100 is repaid. Okay. So the fastest way for me to get my money back is actually to sell that note that you owe me $100 to somebody else and let them service it, and then I take the money and I go and make another loan with it. So what we're really, really, really good at is helping people decide on loan product, originating that loan product, and then by servicing it, we actually maintain relationships with all the people that buy the loans off of our books in the secondary market. And so when issues pop up regarding, whether it's your escrow accounts, real jargony word there
Yeah.
for you, but taxes, insurance, you're having trouble getting the automated payments to work and you need to get in touch with customer service. One of the beautiful things about being the fourth largest lender in the country is you can pick up the phone and call me. I'm still your primary contact point, even though I don't own the loan anymore. And I can get our servicing team involved. And usually within 24 hours, I can have any question resolved that in other situations, you'd be picking up the phone to an 800 number and, hanging on the line while you listen to wait music.
Waiting music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always painful. But you get to deal with my happy, shiny, smiley face throughout your life cycle. And that's the beauty of working with an independent banker.
How do you develop your clientele? Is it people just reaching out to you? Is it realtors? Like, how do you develop the people that you work with?
That's an awesome question. So a lot of it is from partners. Okay. So and by partners, I mean folks that have chosen me and my company to be the best people to work with. Okay. And they're comfortable referring to us. It's nothing. There's no quid pro quo. There's no compensation for it. It's strictly we've done the best for them in the past, and they trust us with their business going forward. So largely, it's earned through trust. But one of the beauties about my business, the mortgage business, and one of the reasons I got into it, I used to work in an institutional business where my clients were private equity funds and hedge funds and these large investors.
I'll ask you about that later.
Yeah, we can dive into it. But one of the beauties about this business is I get to work with my friends, my family, my neighbors. I do loans for people in my neighborhood all the time. I do things in my circle of influence where I'm involved in different segments of the community. And so you cultivate those relationships of trust. And I'll go back to, I'm called a mortgage loan officer. I view myself and call myself an advisor. And think of myself as a fiduciary for my clients. It's not a formal fiduciary. You'd never see a mortgage loan officer actually have a fiduciary agreement. But I try to give folks good advice, and I tell my clients all the time, I don't care whether we close a loan. Ultimately, I want to leave you in a better position than when you came to me. And if I do that at the end of the day, I can look myself in the mirror and I can sleep at night and know that I've done a good job. So, giving good advice and earning trust is really how I get my clients.
Right. Let's talk about you for a minute. Are you from the area, or give us your background?
Awesome. So, I actually grew up in Marshfield. So until third grade, we lived here and went to Holy Family School over in Rockland for a bit, and Montessori, now Inley School, over in Norwell, and then my family relocated down to Centerville on the Cape. Wow. So really in the late 80s, we moved down to the Cape and spent a lot of my childhood there, and then moved on, and I've been all over the East Coast. Went to high school, went to a boarding school up on the North Shore of Mass, Governor's Academy, Go Govs, oldest boarding school in the country.
Really?
Yeah, 1763.
Wow.
Yeah, our founders actually went on to found Phillips Andover and Phillips Exeter. So it's kind of funny. You drive by Andover and they've got the sign that says it, but we always know. We know the truth. The truth is out there. So and then wound up down in the South for a long time. Went to college at Charleston. Graduated from there and bounced around in investment banking and consulting. Richmond, Northern Virginia, Washington D.C., and then up in Cambridge. And then my wife and I relocated back to Marshfield from D.C. In 2013 to start a family. Couldn't think of any better place in the world to start a family. And I should add, my wife is a Marshfield High School graduate. So we met in Richmond, Virginia, of all places.
That's funny.
Stuck on a flight flying home for Christmas. and sat down next to a beautiful girl. Turned out she was from Marshfield, and boom, Jim Cantwell always says that we're struck by
the cosmic lottery.
Cosmic lottery, and not only did I get the town in the cosmic lottery, I got the girl too.
Were you on the flight with her, or you were waiting for the flight?
Walked into the terminal, saw a beautiful girl sitting there, and next thing you know, our flight was stranded for 8 hours, and there was a Sam Adams brew pub behind us. So like any good Bostonian, I tapped her on the foot and said, "Hey, let's grab a beer. We got time to kill."
So what were you doing? We had talked about this, off camera prior. You had a really interesting career down the whole Beltway area prior to coming back here. Talk about some of the stuff you were doing there.
So I worked for a long time in equity research, investment banking, and consulting. Originally I got into equity research, writing research on the publicly traded mid-cap defense stocks. So a lot to digest there, but really companies that were between $50 and $500 million in market valuation that were publicly traded, New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, who specialized in defense products for the U.S. government. So not the Lockheed Martins of the world, but I knew
Smaller
them, tracked
guys.
them closely. But companies like AeroVironment, who makes small unmanned aerial vehicles, drones for the U.S. government. Companies like FLIR Systems, Ducommun. They're a company that made aero components for Boeing and some of the other manufacturers out there. So really kind of niche-y stuff, geeky tech stuff, government contracting. But it was really interesting to work in an area of the world in the area of investment that was tied so heavily to policy and budget funding cycles and be really techie at the same time. But that kind of followed me on, and I moved up to Cambridge, still writing research, and then moved into working with private equity companies in a consulting role on leveraged buyouts, and also working with strategic acquirers, other companies buying companies, advising them on, this is what a company really does and how they're making money doing it.
What made you jump to the mortgage world?
I grew unhappy. So like any person that's approaching midlife, you start to review your priorities. My wife and I, like I said, Allison and I moved to Marshfield in 2013 to start a family. And we had a son who was then 2 years old at the time. And I was spending an inordinate amount of time with clients on conference calls in my office in Cambridge and doing really, really interesting work, but just increasingly unfulfilled by it. And one day my 2-year-old looked at me and asked, "Dada, where you go? Where you go?" Because I never saw him. I was coming home at 11 o'clock at night and going back to work at 7 in the morning. And so, we were just crossing each other's paths occasionally. And I knew that wasn't the life I wanted to live. I wanted to be really involved in my community, and I wanted to be really involved with my family. I just didn't want to live and die by my work.
Right.
So picked up and started reviewing my priorities, and talked to some really close friends who were amazing advisors who guided me back to my true north. And it was a amazing decision. I've never been happier, never been more successful with my career either. It's just been wonderful.
I know you're not the type of guy that's like in the office, air quotes, all day. What's the normal day for you? Because I know you're always out and about, meeting with people.
That's one of the wonderful things about my business, if I really think about it. When I started reviewing the career change, I did this whole entire analysis of where my skill sets were. And I had spent a lot of my career in front of a computer terminal modeling and writing and, crushing the phone calls day in and day out. And I was successful at it, but it was in spite of my skills. Right. My skills are more relationship building and talking to people.
Yeah.
And so my day-to-day now is really largely focused on that relationship building and that advising folks. I've tried to create a team in my business that helps support me and does a lot of that work, that number crunching and that document correlation and all the back office type stuff, so I can be out spending time with clients. We were prepping to sit down for this, and I'm meeting one of my realtor partners for lunch right now. So a typical day is some sort of community meeting in the morning, getting on the phone and answering emails from overnight and structuring some things for the next day, and then meeting a partner for lunch, and then in the afternoon a coffee with another partner, and then end of the day really getting back with clients as questions and issues build up through the day that you've got to digest. But my day goes 24/7 still. Well, I might have changed who I get to work with.
You're constantly doing business.
My workaholic nature hasn't really changed. My wife probably would appreciate it if I could figure out a way to dial it back. But the tremendous part is people have responded to the way that I do business, and the phone keeps ringing, and I'm always going to answer it. So, to that note, pick up the phone, give me a call if you've got questions about mortgage. Always happy to answer.
Who's the best partner for you? So if it's all about referrals and business and developing relationships, who are what are the best partners for you, characteristics?
Characteristic wise, it's people that are willing to trust in you, your team, and your process. Open heart, open mind. I've got a financial advisor partner that always says that to me. Andrew Guyton, the Guyton Group, fantastic financial advisor. Open heart, open mind. You're willing to accept advice and partner with somebody to grow your business, and you're willing to put your trust in them in a committed fashion. In our business, there's no real way that you can financially structure things. You're legally not allowed to, nor would I want to structure things where you bind people up. This is a business of trust, and it's earned day in and day out. And so when you find somebody that you can put that trust in, I've found that the really successful partnerships for me are the folks that own that fully and completely and invest in it so that we can share business. And that's not just referrals back and forth, but it's sharing business planning. It's sharing ideas on how to grow each other's business. It's co-marketing. It extends through the gamut of opportunities. We find ways to align really tightly with each other through family, friends, relationships. It's a beautiful thing when it really is clicking.
Talk to me about the chamber. I know you're a VP over there. That's how I got to know you. Talk about some of the stuff you've done, and some things that you're working on. I know you're heavily involved with quite a few things on that side.
The chamber's been an amazing experience for me. Like we said earlier, one of the priorities for me when I shifted careers was to be able to roll up my sleeves and be very involved in my community. I didn't want Marshfield just to be a place that I slept. I wanted it to be a place where I lived, worked, and played. That's our motto over at the chamber these days. Under your leadership, we really, I felt like we started to find our footing as an organization. You did some amazing heavy lifting as president of the organization for many years to give us a strong foundation to grow from. Now Alyssa McNamara Financial Group, another wonderful advisor, financial advisor, if you guys are looking for one. She's the president now, and she set a really progressive agenda for us.
Yes.
And my passion is economic development, taking my skills in business analysis, in government budget analysis, and policy work, in community constituency building, and driving those relationships in those skills to make meaningful change in the community. Some of the stuff that we're working on now, Webster Walkability Initiative. So down in Webster Square, there's been a lot of traffic issues and a lot of opportunity despite some raggedness around the edges. I think people have really worked hard to make it a place that folks want to gather.
Make it a downtown.
And make it a downtown. It's taking it that last extra mile to make it really a place that sings. There's music there, but it's not quite singing in tune just yet. And so as an organization, Alyssa was able to get everybody to sit down at a table, and then Tim Williams, Flaherty Insurance, fantastic partner as well. He's a member of the board over at the chamber, and some other partners, Laura Braid, our executive director. We were able to wrangle town officials. Mike Moresco has been a huge champion of this, and the DPW and Sean Patterson and the guys over there, Greg Guimond in the planning office, to bring together all the different parties around the table and come up with a thoughtful approach for the chamber members and the non-chamber member businesses that are in town center to solve some of the low-hanging fruit problems and let us move on to some more investment-oriented problems. How do the building owners and businesses make investment decisions longer term to be down there? Some other initiatives that we're starting to approach. but just beginning down the road of, what's going to happen down in Green Harbor and Brant Rock with the business community down there that's gone through some different puts and takes. What's going to happen with single use versus multi-use overlays up along 139. There's a lot of friction with the business community up in that area of town. So just there's a lot of opportunity to make small, thoughtful changes in the policy around town to make Marshfield much more effective for its residents, and continue to maintain the village-like feel of our town. I don't think one of the things, and I know you've got other questions. I don't want to dive off on a digression too far.
Yeah.
One of the things that always strikes me when we sit down and start thinking about these things, this isn't growth or progress for progress's sake. We're not grow at any expense sort of mentality over at the Chamber these days. It's a very thoughtful approach to what is the character of our town? How do we maintain that character while making small, thoughtful improvements that improve the overall quality of life for everybody, and do so in a fiscally responsible manner? That's really the most important part. Is I don't think the Chamber ever comes hand out. We're always asking, how can we contribute?
Right.
What dollars need to be spent from our coffers to move this project forward?
How can we support project A, B, or C?
It's been amazing. Some of the interesting things that have happened down with Webster Walkability. The Chamber shouldered the traffic study down there. We raised all the funds for it, and it wasn't a small endeavor.
No.
And it's not something that was on town's radar with being able to do in the budget. And so Chamber said, this is really important to town center, to town, to our members. Let's take it on. And we've been able to move the ball forward because we grew such constituency down there. So
you also presented the grant writer article at town meeting not too long ago.
Yeah, that was a no-brainer. Tim Williams and I like to sit down and have sort of thought exercises about that low-hanging fruit we were just talking about. He's been an amazing partner of mine over at the Chamber to come up with these ideas and find the right people to bring these things forward. And when we looked at some of the issues that were going on around town, funding continuously is a question. And I by nature am a fiscally conservative individual. I don't want any of my neighbors to pay for any of my passion projects. That just is not sensible for me.
Right.
Because I want to put flowers in the traffic medians, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, everybody should pay more in taxes. That just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
So Tim and I started to read up on the grant process and get a little bit smarter about this. Tim has a little bit more experience through his Coastal Coalition work than I do. But just knowing government budgets, there are these huge pools of money that we as taxpayers...
It's a lot of grant money.
Yeah, we pay into them year in and year out as taxpayers. But Marshfield, because we didn't have a grant writer, was not taking back its fair share in grant funding, whether it's through the Seaport Economic Council or through governor's grants or through budget requests up at the State House, or on the federal level. There's a ton of money. Yeah. And so we said, listen, there's this huge opportunity if we can carve out a very small piece of town's budget to amplify that piece 10x, 20x, 30x, and really get some huge return on the spend and hopefully move some of these projects forward, whether it's trail committee stuff, whether it's Webster Walkability, whether it's the skate park, it's the seawalls, the Moby mats down at the beach, parking studies for the beaches, traffic studies for 139, you name it. Yeah. There's 1,000 different projects around town that need funding, and there's plenty of cash out there in the federal and state coffers to get it, or private coffers even.
Starting to wrap up in a little bit here, but just want to jump to some journal stuff. What do you think is the best piece of advice you've ever received business-wise?
Oh, wow. This isn't going to look good on video. You can trim this down a little bit.
Or a person that you, in your career, that you've kind of taken some influence from.
So I had a business professor down at College of Charleston. I wish I had spent more time thinking ahead of time about this. His name was Harlan Hodges. He had spent a lot of time with Gerber in their product lines there. But he always used to have little nuggets that he'd hand to us.
If you could jump back and jump in the time machine, what's something you would tell yourself, when you were first kind of starting out in your career, that now, or like a piece of advice, or
don't be afraid of starting.
Okay.
Sometimes you think you know what you want and you want to jump in, but you don't know how. Just roll up your sleeves and start doing it. You're gonna break eggs. You're gonna make mistakes, but life is about the journey, and you don't always know the final destination when you get on the road. So it's been an interesting path in my career. Meet lots of people, ask lots of questions, create lots of relationships. It's amazing the places that those will take you, but be willing to step back from time to time and really press yourself hard on what is most meaningful to you. I think I spend a lot of time counseling people these days, especially partners in my team members. We're in the process of bringing on a junior right now. Find your big why. When you're 15, 16, 17, 24, 30, 35, whatever the age is, that big why might be a little nebulous, a little harder to pin down. It becomes a moving target, though, and that's what I mean by don't be afraid of making mistakes. You're just because you say it today is your big why doesn't mean tomorrow is. For me, it's my family. That's my barometer now, how I measure all activities. If it's not moving me meaningfully forward towards spending more quality time with my family, then it's not an activity I need to be involved in. So I find that the folks that really have that big why nailed down suddenly feel the clutter fall away. The noise disappears. You become super clear about the direction you need to go. And then when you're making mistakes, it's more about how you're aiming at that target.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on Let's Talk Business, Jeremy. I greatly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule for doing this.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Jonathan. Thanks so much for having me.
Cool.